Are one rookie running back's fumbling issues about to tank your plans to win in fantasy this week? What AFC East team do you need to avoid in your lineups this weekend? And is one NFC North running back primed for a blow-up performance in Week 7? Plus, the fourth place overall team in the 2025 FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament, Tyler Clendenin, is going to join us to break down Kayshon Boutte's 2025 second act, how much of a believer he is in Kimani Vidal in the near future, and much more. We've got a great show for you. Ferrell Elliott is here. I'm Eric Balkman. Stick around. Your high-stakes fantasy football hour starts now.
Can't stand the pressure. I've seen greater men than need a lesson.
Broadcast live and heard around the world, you are now watching the most entertaining hour of radio on the planet. Welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com with your hosts Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott. The High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour is your home for analysis from the best players in the world. And now, because no one else was available, here are Eric Balkman and Ferrell Elliott.
Solace in the scripture. Are we not all our father's sons? I became a man. Nobody ever told me what a man was.
Greetings and salutations to all of you Balkaholics. Welcome aboard for the latest episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by myffpc.com. I'm your slightly above average host, Eric Balkman, and my co-host is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. I want to remind everybody, if you have not taken advantage of the FFPC Weekly Challenge, make sure you're doing so right now at myffpc.com. That's right. You can play weekly fantasy football with the FFPC, and you don't have to draft. You don't have to manage a salary cap. You're just picking 10 players. Or if you are an OG, you can play with kickers and defenses and pick 12 players as well. Win up to $2,500 in 10, 30, or 100 team contests. Only one player per NFL team. If you want Jaden Daniels, you can't have Zach Ertz. If you want Carson Wentz, you can't have Justin Jefferson. One player per team. That's the slant. That's what makes it so much fun. myffpc.com. You can build a lineup in minutes and win up to $2,500 this weekend. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live. I'll have a schedule of what's going on with the FFPC family of podcasts at the end of the show next week, or I'll tell you what's going on with next week's shows at the end of the show tonight. Oinker is here. Very excited to talk to one Tyler Clendenin tonight. The fourth place overall team owner in the Big Gorilla Tournament is going to join us to mix it up about Rashee Rice's return, K-Dot's future stat line against Detroit on Monday night, and much more. We are going to get into how much upside there is with Michael Mayer on Sunday, with probably no Brock Bowers, how Kevin O'Connell's choice at quarterback in Minnesota is going to affect your fantasy lineups, and plenty other fantasy football knowledge going around the FFPC as we head into Week 7. He was not here last week, but he is here this week. He is feeling better, so good, in fact, that he has traveled out to Casa de Gazzetti, hanging out, broadcasting, or I should say streaming the show live from Dominic, a friend of the show, Dominic Gazzetti's place in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. He is the definitive commissioner of fantasy football, Mr. Ferrell Elliott. Ferrell, good evening. How have the travels been so far, my friend?
Rugged, but and very ambitious, but so far fulfilled. And the best part about it, I've been away from home 4 days, and everything about it has just been positive. I've accomplished a great deal, but spending time here at with Dom Gazzetti is a real blast, and he's very gracious, Balky, to host me where I can join you tonight. Not only did he host me, but he has some fine Kentucky bourbon here waiting.
Oh boy, Kentucky bourbon in Las Vegas. Who'd have
we're
thought?
in mighty fine condition here in Las Vegas for tonight's show.
That's excellent to hear. I'm glad to hear everything's going good. I want to, in honor of Dom, let's kick off the show tonight and talk about one of his beloved San Francisco 49ers. You and I were talking off the stream about this George Kittle thing. Nick Wagner, beat reporter, I believe, for ESPN.com. Don't quote me on that, but I know he covers the 49ers. You can quote me on that. George Kittle said he fully plans to play in Week 7 against the Falcons, limited capacity in practice on Thursday. And I'm actually looking to the practice report today just to confirm what he practiced. I mean, I'm sure it was at least a limited practice that he got in. And of course, my computer is failing me right now, as it often does. I can tell you right now that George Kittle was told, or excuse me, the rest of us were told by Kyle Shanahan that George Kittle is going to be activated from injured reserve before the Falcons game on Sunday Night Football. And obviously, you want to get Jake Tonjes out of your lineup at this point. Kendrick Bourne, you got to slow your role player, as Steve Harvey would say on that. Kittle now steps into a situation where he doesn't have to contend for targets with Ricky Pearsall, with Brandon Ayuk. He will contend for targets with Kendrick Bourne and Juwan Jennings. But Ferrell, with Kittle, FFPC tight end premium, I know it feels a little weird to wait on him until Sunday Night Football, but to feel confident enough that, hey, I'm willing to take the risk, because it's not a big one at this point, to start Kittle on Sunday night.
Well, yes, and especially for the owners, and I would applaud the owners that picked up Jake Tonjes, who played a wonderful role and got into a groove and scored fantasy points for all the fantasy owners. They probably, if you have Kittle in your club, you probably had a number 2 tight end that you drafted much later, and so I suppose that you did not get the production that Tonjes. And I'd be at a very unhappy farewell to Jake, because I don't have Kittle, but I do have a lot of Jake. And the whole 49ers roster has been like this year. And we've seen players return from injury that have not performed very well for us so far this year. And so Kittle is the one exception that I would say there's not a tougher footballer in the league. And if he says he's ready to play, I trust him. And I'm sure that's the way the 49ers feel about him. Medical staff may have some different feelings, but he might be able to shout them down in a decision-making situation.
You know, Bill Hollywood brings this up on YouTube right now. He says, can you drop Bourne now? And I will say, as God is my witness, as long as Mac Jones is under center for the San Francisco 49ers, you cannot afford to drop Kendrick Bourne. I'm probably going to be starting him in a couple of leagues this week. I feel like, you know, even when Brock Purdy takes back over, Ferrell, until Pearsall's healthy, until Jennings is fully healthy, which may not come the rest of 2025, and until Ayuk comes back, that might not be till week 10. I feel like if you can make it through week 8 with 6 teams on bye next week, if you can make it through week 8 with Bourne still on your roster, man, just keep riding him until he or the Niners give you a reason not to keep him. Stick him on your roster, keep him there.
Yeah, and a couple of weeks ago, we had a lot of guys on the show that in the chat that said you got to let Bourne go. No, he has a role with this team, and when Jennings is a perfect example of an injured player who tried to come back, and he was just a shell of himself in last week's game, and he was on the field for a lot of snaps the last time the 49ers played. So I feel that we want to keep this player. That's what a 20-man roster is for. He's your 20th man, but he's a valuable one if he's going to be on the field.
I want to move to our nation's capital here. Tashawn Reed had this report this week from Cliff Kingsbury, the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, said he was still still confident in Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt despite his fumbles. The last 2 games, Crosky-Merritt has fumbled twice, 1 in each game. Jaden Daniels also, if you remember, bobbled a handoff that he was trying to hand off to Crosky-Merritt in the 4th quarter that the Commanders also turned the ball over on. So obviously not great that Kingsbury has to answer this question at all, but he answered it pretty well. And I'm very bullish on Crosky-Merritt this week, Ferrell. He's got a really good matchup. And if we look at, the other options that you have on your roster, you may not find much better ones than Crosky-Merritt visiting Dallas. I think that he's going to have a pretty good game. And I feel like, despite the fumbles, he's borderline must start to me this week, unless you're really, really rich at running back.
I agree. And this is a player that not only can come, we welcomed back Chase Brown to the lineup on Thursday night to play. 12 points. 12 fantasy points, lots of yards, no touchdowns. Thank you, Stephen G. But, Crosky-Merritt is a player with a very, very high ceiling. And Balky, you've got the right answer. Put him in your lineup and live with the 27-point game, live with the 4-point game. Chances are, as this season goes more along, and especially with the kind of matchups that you're going to have in division for this team, there's a situation where you'll lean closer to 20 points than you will to single digits. I love Bill Merritt. It's going to be a thrill to watch him throughout the year. And when widely around the league, running backs are getting abused because of the number of fumbles. All players are. But the defenders need to be applauded. With the way that the famous peanut punch and the way that these guys are aggressively attacking the ball carriers. It's good defensive football, and running backs will have to come up with a new way to protect that ball because it's happening to any ball carrier at any position, and the defenders seem to be a step above or a step ahead of them in separating them from the ball.
So I'm going to do two things here. Number one, Tom Smith chiming in right now. And I missed the boat on this one. I should have had this on at the start. It says, bust out the Raiders chain with Ferrell being in Las Vegas. I will do that right now. Put my Raiders chain on over my Uke sweatshirt. Let's go Brewers. They're going to need a miracle here to keep this alive. But whatever. Tom also has a question. By the way, Tom gave me all I could handle in the KFFSC main event, one of the leagues we were going against each other last week. Final score of 173 to 169. Very, very close. Great game, Tom. He also has a question here tonight. Quarterback question, Ferrell. Justin Fields at home against Carolina or Jackson Dart in Denver? I know how I feel about this. How do you feel about it?
That's easy. We're going to go for Dart.
Oh, it was easy for me, and I said Fields. Let's hear
with Dart.
Dart.
We're going with Dart because with that tough Denver defense, we're going to get a chance to see what Dart can do with his feet.
I have no doubt that he will be running. He's been running so far this season, and I think that's not a lot of people realize that, or at least some people don't realize that about him this week. My concern is, does he do it enough with? And this is the same argument you're probably going to make about why you should bench Justin Fields. Is he going to do enough with his legs to counteract the fact that he's probably not going to blow up with his arm?
No, Dart is a more complete player with players that are playing at a different level around him. And Fields lost a very important component in his group of weapons for the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's an easy decision for me.
That game, that Giants-Broncos game, total is 39.5, which I don't feel great about. I do think, and not that the total in the Panthers-Jets game is much higher. It's 42.5. Carolina defense been sneaky decent this year. And I'll say regarding Fields, one of the biggest reasons, and this is more of a gut thing for me than a matchup thing, I just feel after a performance like that, that he had one of the worst performances we've seen in New York Jets passing history. I feel like we're overrating that. It's a weekly game. And because of recency bias, we're like, how could you ever play a guy like Fields ever again? And my thought on that is, I saw what he did in week one. I know the talent's there. I know Garrett Wilson probably won't be, but I bet he hooks up a bunch with Mason Taylor. I bet he does a lot with his legs. And I could honestly see the Jets winning that game too. At home against Carolina, I think Fields is the play. I really worry about Jackson Dart turning the ball over and ending a lot of those drives prematurely in Denver. It's close for me. I guess after hearing your argument, it's not as easy a decision as I thought. But Tom, there you go. Farrell's saying Dart. I'm saying Justin Fields here. Okay, let's move on. Tom said,
I can tell Fields has been in your head all week long.
It probably has been. Speaking of quarterbacks, Ray C. Let's go to Ray C's question here. Rico Dowdle or Alvin Kamara? This is another easy one for me. I'm playing Dowdle here over Kamara, even though I think Kamara is a good start this week.
Yeah, Kamara always a good start. Ray C., if you're going to find someone to tell you to bench a running back that's damn near accounted for 200 yards in back-to-back games, it's not going to be here, sir. So I'm going to say stay with Rico. I hope you were listening 2 or 3 weeks ago when we told you to start Rico over everyone, and you would have been rewarded if you did. We go back to in August, and we talked about it, Balky, and we said Hubbard may have a fine season, but I think Dowdle is a better running back. And, this was a moribund offense for the start of the season, and Dowdle has given them life. So I know Hubbard will when he returns in his best form, will continue to be a big part of this offense. But Dowdle has been a beast, and he plays like a man on a mission. And it's made watching that team for the first time a good time.
Going to be interesting to see the split between Hubbard and Dowdle this week, as Dave Canales said that Hubbard is going to play against the Jets. I don't think this is going to be an even split. I think this is Hubbard getting 25-30%, somewhere around there. This is just speculation. I have nothing to base this on. 25-30%, and I think Dowdle's more like the 70-75% guy until he proves that he can't handle it. Hubbard's sort of been Wally Pipped here, and we'll move on from there.
Yeah, what a great one! What a great
Wally Pipp.
Yeah, and you might need to explain to the kids and off. We need that. We need that high stakes fantasy football follow up show. Where you can explain to all the kids who Wally Pipp is, because we don't want to do that now because we got great guests waiting for us.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do is bring up baseball in front of Ferrell on a fantasy.
Oh my God, no! But it is hard times, and I'm really saying a prayer for your Milwaukee Brewers.
Thank you. We're going to need a bunch of them. Alec Lewis reporting that Kevin O'Connell said both J.J. McCarthy and Carson Wentz will get practice work this week. However, he did name Wentz as the starter this week for the Minnesota Vikings as they host the Eagles. I think this is better for Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson is probably going to be on all my benches. I don't think I'm going to play him at all this week, but I think it's better for Jordan Mason, Ferrell. In my opinion, good news here, and good news as long as Wentz is keeping Jefferson and Addison not only relevant but successful. I don't really want to see a turn to McCarthy here. I was glad to see this, and hopefully this continues in future weeks, unless Wentz just proves that he's not capable of handling the gig anymore.
Mm-hmm. Carson Wentz will make all of your fantasy plays from the Vikings somewhat of a nail biter, but he's going to deliver more often than he isn't. Alec Lewis is the gentleman with this report, Eric.
That's correct. Yeah,
he's talking that the number 1 and the number 2 quarterback both got work in practice this week. Man, that's a newsbreaker right there.
What is interesting, and we got this from Kevin Seifert, who covers the NFC North and the Vikings for ESPN. McCarthy's actually not even the number 2. He's going to be the emergency number 3. Max Brosmer is going to continue to back up Carson Wentz this week. So I would imagine that maybe McCarthy's a little bit further off than we think. I don't know. It'll be something worth exploring here as we move forward the middle of our fantasy season here in the FFPC and the KFFSC. A guy who has had a very successful first portion of the season so far is our guest tonight, Ferrell. He is a former 3-time champ of high-stakes fantasy football leagues in the FFPC, but he's hoping for even bigger things this year. He entered Week 7 sitting behind just 3 teams overall in the chase for the $1 million grand prize in the FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament. Please welcome onto the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, Mr. Tyler Clendenin. Tyler, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me. I was a little nervous about having to sneak beers until Ferrell proudly displayed some bourbon on the screen, so now I'm feeling pretty good.
Needed, sir.
Yeah, I don't have to worry about it now.
Yeah, no, you're all good. You're all good. So don't worry about that. Listen, before we get into the fantasy football portion of our chat tonight, Tyler, what are you doing for a living nowadays when you're not winning these FFPC leagues and hanging around the top of the Big Gorilla leaderboard?
Yeah, I think this is the second week in a row that you guys have had a CFO on stream. So I'm a CFO of a construction company here in Central Florida, down through the Bradenton area.
That's awesome. That's fantastic stuff. Good to hear it. This has been like the CFO portion of the hsffhour schedule here so far in 2025. Let's bring this up right away. We're going to throw a curveball right away here because I don't think I have this on the rundown at all. Tom Smith mentions that Terry McLaurin is going to be out this week. Deebo Samuel may or may not play. Tyler, I'll throw this to you. Is there anybody worth playing this week in Week 7 FFPC lineups other than Zach Ertz? And before you answer that, I'm just going to tell you right now that the total on that Commanders game, which is a 4:25 game start on Sunday afternoon in Dallas, is at 54.5. Certainly there must be more fantasy goodness catching passes from Jaden Daniels besides Krosky, Merritt, and Ertz, right?
Yeah, this is a spot where someone's going to play somebody in DFS for under $4,500 and make $1,000,000. I just don't know who that's going to be. With Ertz, obviously, I feel comfortable with him. This feels more like a JCM smash spot to me. I don't love having to pick who the other pass catcher is going to be. It wouldn't shock me if Jaden carries, a lot of the weight here. But man, I mean, who are you even going to pick? I mean, Noah Brown's been banged up at various points this year too, hasn't he? So I don't even know who you pivot to. I feel like it's just going to be a couple sims with some dart throws, and then you just hope for the best, running it back and doing some bringbacks, trying to take advantage of that high total. But I would feel super uncomfortable trying to give you guys a name of who that would be.
I think that's exactly right, because there's some receivers in that room that I really like. There's none of them. I like them all as football players. Steve G fills in with Luke McCaffrey, and Luke's involvement and play style has increased this year. I've been impressed with him. I sure wouldn't want to start him in fantasy football.
Yeah, I think that the thing here to understand is unless your waiver wire is completely barren in the FFPC, remember, you're going to have a 10 a.m. Eastern waiver wire on Sunday. KFFSC is going to have a pre kickoff waiver wire run as well. Unless you're decimated, the only way I play, and by the way, it is McCaffrey is the guy I'd go with. I'm not going to wish cast Chris Moore or Jalen Lane into doing anything. McCaffrey's the guy I like here, but only if I have Samuel, only if I have McLaurin, like where I actually need somebody to step in who might still be out there. I don't, as Public Enemy would say, can't trust it. And I don't trust it basically right now. All right, Ferrell, let's move on here and talk about one exciting New England Patriots receiver for kind of the second time on this show this season.
Well, we've talked about him aggressively. He was a name that was showing up in our Pros versus Joe's Balky, if you'll remember. And then Keyshawn Boutte, as we moved through preseason, as people watched New England and questioned what was going to happen with the offense, he slid and slid and slid. Your information to me earlier today was that when we were in Las Vegas last and drafting there at the Paris Hotel and Casino, that he was a 19th round draft pick. Tyler, where did you pick this player?
I did draft Keyshawn in a few leagues, but I actually was one of the people that attacked him week one, just with some of the ambiguity in that wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. I've heard Balky say that he's not in love with Diggs this season, and I had similar thoughts. I did not love Diggs at cost.
If I had leaned over your shoulder and looked at your draft board, if you had drafted him, and I said, Tyler, early in the middle of October, your 19th round draft pick there is going to have about 20 catches, and he's going to be scoring some touchdowns, and he looks like he might be the go-to guy for the young quarterback. You would have felt pretty good about that. So what do you think going forward? Are we going to see more of this player? I think we are. I think he has good physicality. I think he wins the contested catch, and he out-physicals a lot of the defensive backs that have to deal with him. When you put Diggs on the other side, that's even a bigger problem I think we saw some of that at Buffalo. Your thoughts on this player that might be late-round gold for your teams?
The funny thing is that game could have been even crazier than it was if not for that OPI. I mean, he had another huge catch called back. I think Drake May in that game lost about 116 yards and a touchdown to OPIs. So as awesome as that game was for everybody, it could have been even better. I'm excited about Keyshawn, but I do think we need to get through the trade deadline. This is a team that I think could maybe take advantage of some of these trade rumors where you've got guys like Olave being floated out there. You've got guys like Jacoby Myers, Jalen Waddle. Waddle doesn't make sense to me. I don't know why you get rid of him if you're Miami. But if we can survive that trade deadline without changing this wide receiver room up much, I do think that Keyshawn's a dude that's a bigger late season smash than somebody like Diggs, so I'm actually kind of scared of down the run just because of the age and the health concerns. So I like that I have him. He's not like a super awesome click for me yet in managed formats where I'm deep. And, the team that you guys are talking about, I'm deep enough to where I don't have to play him. But I am excited about him as long as we can get past that trade deadline and they don't add talent in that room.
Let me make the anti-Keyshawn Boutte argument for fantasy football. Drake May is too good. He's just too talented of a quarterback. You need, and this is, and I'll bring up, this is the icon argument. This is something I've said. Dave the Dizzle Gerzak sort of champion this. If you are a stud receiver, and I don't think Booty's a stud, but I do think he's flashed. And part of the reason he can only flash is because Drake May is a good enough quarterback to hit Diggs when he's open, to hit Demario Douglas when he's open, Hunter Henry when he's open, Kayshon Boutte when he's open. And because of that, Boutte will not see enough targets on a week-to-week basis where you can feel comfortable about him starting for you in your leagues. Now, you have a Diggs problem, you have a Douglas problem as far as injuries or anything go, then yeah, I think Boutte's more startable. But you need him getting passes from a quarterback like Spencer Rattler, Dylan Gabriel, Justin Fields, these guys who are like just one read. Like I am jamming it into that receiver by hook or by crook, and that is how Boutte gets his targets. May is just too good for that. And so best ball, yes, I'm all in on Boutte. I have Boutte on a couple of rosters as well, Tyler. He is not going to sniff, and you mentioned the trade deadline, which I think is very shrewd, something we should be keeping in mind. He is not going to sniff my lineups unless we have probably multiple injuries or multiple issues with some of these other Patriots receivers so I can get him in my lineup. The good part about it is he's shown me enough where I think he's rosterable. He's owned in like 98%, 96% of Big Gorilla and main event leagues. So he needs to be rostered. It's just he's one of those players you want to let marinate until you pop him off at the right time, which could be the 3-week sprint at the end of the season. You never know.
Or last week.
That's a good point. Or last
week would have been a good time.
Buck, you're making a good point, and I'm also kind of viewing May now almost like Josh Allen, where you don't really know who the pass catchers are going to be. The only elite part of that passing game, is going to be the quarterback. Yeah. So same division, but same sort of feeling for me, where I love May. I want a piece of May. I want as much exposure to him as I can get, but I was more backstacked on May with guys like Kyle Williams, Demario Douglas, Hunter Henry, that I was with like Diggs and then forcing a May. I was forcing a May and then trying to catch, some sort of like receiving weapon on the back end of drafts. So
Balky, you offered it for sale, Balky, and then the CFO came in and closed it.
Yeah.
Now I'm beginning to question some of the Boutte. But you know what? I don't necessarily think that I have the fourth best team right now in the FFPC. So I may not have the luxury of playing some players over Boutte.
Well, I would say Tyler carries a little bit of clout because this roster that you have put together, Tyler, absolutely loaded. Christian McCaffrey, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jake Ferguson, Rico Dowdle, James Cook, Puka Nacua. I know this is going to sound like a very condescending question. Well, a little bit. Maybe the answer is going to be more condescending, but I feel like I'm lobbing you a softball. Has it been difficult to submit the correct lineup every single week when you have, and I don't even list all your playmakers. You have other great players besides this. These are the heavy hitters. Has it been difficult trying to get the right players in each and every week? Because sometimes that can be difficult.
So the 2 flex spots have been incredibly challenging on this team. I've been locking in JSN, Puka, James Cook, Christian McCaffrey, no problem. But the sort of challenge I've had post-Bucky Irving injury, I have Dowdle, I have White, I have Waddle. And I'm actually benching Waddle post Tyreek Hill, which feels like an insane luxury to have. Like that's ridiculous. Yeah. So, I'm in a spot right now where I'm almost hoping they shut down Puka this week. And I think that's where it's trending. Give him the bye. I'll play Waddle. I'll play, Rico. I'll play White. James Cook has the bye. I may even play both tight ends and go Goddard and Ferguson just because I like the spot for Goddard against Minnesota. I think, I'm a Minnesota fan. The way to really attack our defense is quick passes. You saw Aaron Rodgers do that against us. Flores loves to scheme up and confuse. And the way that you really attack a Flores defense, you just PPR scam all over the field with somebody like Dallas Goedert. I think it's a great spot for him. So it wouldn't shock me at all if I end up leaning double tight end this weekend on this lineup just to take advantage of that and maybe give Puka some rest.
I like that. And Puka has been ruled out for this weekend. Is that correct?
Oh, has he already? I didn't even check. I figured it was done. It didn't make any sense to try to drag him to Europe when they had a week 8 bye. Let him get 100% and then come back because the injury didn't look that bad. When I saw him cutting and testing it out on the sideline, I felt pretty good. But it would have been purely silly to bring him to Europe when they have a week 8 bye. Just let him rest and get 100% for sure.
Yeah, I was surprised that the Rams brought him back into that game after he got hurt. And then when he didn't have any catches, I'm like, okay, this is just You got a bye in week 8, or I beg your pardon. You have bye in week 8. Just bring him back for week 9, and we'll all be good there. And it's great for you, who has the luxury of still being able to bench Jalen Waddle on a Puka, which is fantastic for certain. I know that I don't know if I kind of talked to death about Jordan Whittington and Tutu Atwell last night with CH Herms from Fantasy Points and FTN Fantasy on the Insider Access show on Better Sports Network. So I don't think we need to get into the replacement receivers for Puka Nacua in London. However, Ferrell, there is a receiver coming back this week from injury off of IR in Carolina that I think I'm excited about to see how it plays.
I think you've been excited about this player for a long time, and you should be. And sometimes Tyler, when we talk about players, we'll say Balky and I have both been high on this player. Balky has led the parade for Tetaroa McMillan, is it? Yeah, McMillan.
Yep.
And McMillan, pardon me?
Both these Panthers receivers, I'm very excited about the rest of the way.
Yeah, well, who's the other one?
Jalen Coker.
Yeah, well, let me ask you about something else.
Please.
Leggett.
No.
He hasn't here's the player's second round draft player. However it was. This is a good ball player. There's some good players in Carolina, but this one is the best. How far are we into the show, Balky?
We're 32 minutes in.
Good, because this is the player that reminds me most of Pittman. So we got to get Pittman in there. But when we're looking at a 70-catch season for this player, maybe beyond that. I think you've identified very early a player on a team that was challenging with how they were going to throw the ball. And you identified this player very early, Balky. So I'd like to give you a lot of credit for that, and talk to Tyler about how you see this mix of the returning Coker and what you think about McMillan for any of your fantasy teams where you have him, or if you happen to not have him on your roster, but you turn around and see that you're playing against him. It's not the most comfortable player I'd like to play against.
You throwing that to me right now, or are we waiting?
Yeah, I'm throwing that out to you, Tyler.
No problem.
Tyler, you're the man we're interested in hearing about. That and the James Hicks post. James, you got to get Oinker ready there, Balky, because James Hicks has a post that we need to share. It's up in the stream, but I was hoping he would do that. But go ahead, Tyler.
No problem. So Coker was one of my 4 favorite clicks at the end of drafts. I was spamming him. I was spamming Torrey Holton, Troy Franklin, and a lot of Wicks. And the run out was amazing. The Adam Thielen trade hits. Now you feel like if you drafted him in that, round 18 to 20, you were going to get like 4, 5, 6 rounds of value. The sky, everything parted. It was perfect. And then the injury hits. He goes on IR. You're a little disappointed there. I love Coker. I think Leggett goes to 0. I don't think Leggett's any good. No disrespect to Xavier Leggett, but I just don't think that he's an elite talent profile at all. He had the same sort of opportunity that Ricky Pearsall had at the beginning of the season. Now, Ricky didn't stay healthy, but you had all these injuries. You had a rookie, T-Mac. You had all the run out you needed to sort of show that you could play that role in that offense, and you completely failed. So I think Coker definitely takes that wide receiver 2 role. I'm not worried about what that means for T-Mac. I'm worried more about what Rico means for T-Mac, because if this running game is sticky, we're going to get longer possessions. We're going to get quicker games. We're going to get fewer pass attempts from Bryce. And if Tet's going to be like this 25% target share alpha, I want him at 35 attempts a game. I don't want him at 25 attempts a game.
How did Rico in mid-October that we're all falling in love with multiple players of the Carolina Panthers?
Carolina might not be bad. I mean,
this was not a situation that anyone wanted to talk to us about in August. But
it's insane. It's insane. And that was, so many people, so many sharps viewed last week as a Javonte Williams smash spot, and he did nothing. That Carolina run defense is not bad. You saw what they did to the Falcons. That game feels a little fluky to me, but the run defense is there. And Rico has done this without, I think, the starting center, the starting right guard. And then I think last week they were without even the starting right tackle. I knew the matchups were soft. They were super soft matchups. But if he's doing this with backups, I'm worried more about what that means for like pass attempts and passing volume for Bryce more than I'm worried about what Jalen Coker does to T-Max target share. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at.
And I think
when I look at the Panthers.
It's a better long version, some definition of this offense. So I like it.
I think you make a good point there. The only pushback I give you on this, Tyler, is if you sunk significant draft assets into McMillan, you're probably playing him anyway. I understand the concern, of like, hey, if Dow and now Hubbard comes back, so now you got this 1-2 punch. I understand the concern, and you could be right. I mean, I could start McMillan every week, and really, I mean. What did he get on his 2 touchdown week? He only had 3 catches that game. 2 of them happened to be for touchdowns. So you raise an interesting point regarding that. Kamani Vidal, speaking of, I can't believe we're 36 minutes into the show. We haven't mentioned this guy yet. Did you see enough from him last week? And maybe more importantly, you didn't see enough from Hassan Haskins to make Kamani Vidal a strong start, even though they're going up against the 5-1 Indianapolis Colts in what could be a battle for the AFC #1 seed in the playoffs this year, Tyler?
Yeah, I'm firing up Vidal in every league that I have him, just because in the FFPC, if you want him, you probably made an aggressive bet on him. I didn't see anybody like dipping their toes in the water. These were serious fab bids, and that's usually coming from a place where you need the production. Hassan Haskins is more of a plotter. He ran like a 4.6, 4.7 40. I know there was the connection with Harbaugh, but it wasn't. The talent profile wasn't that exciting. Vidal's like 2.13, ran in the low 4.4s. Friends of the show, I think guys you've had on last year, guys like Pat Corain, Jacob Sanderson, they were all over Vidal last year, and it just seems like maybe they were a year early. The talent's there. I was slightly nervous about Vidal because, he was a practice squad guy. I would love to have known that they were going to keep him on the 53 before we made all those bids, and people were trying to guess, do I go Vidal, do I go Haskins? But, a lot of the ship chasing crew turned me on to Vidal before, like right at that Hampton injury point. But yeah, I think you have to fire him up. He feels like a pretty safe, 12 to 20 guy, with 20 being the ceiling and 12 being the floor.
I correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys. I don't think Kamani Vidal plays special teams. And if that's the case, then that would make sense that he would need to be elevated off the practice squad. I think that the initial analysis, at least, researching it last week, I was kind of like, well, Haskins was already on the roster. Vidal had to be elevated. But Haskins plays special teams. And I just looked at it from the standpoint of like, well, which guy is going to help me win fantasy games? I don't really see that skill set from Haskins. I did see it from Vidal, at least a little bit. Corain and Sanderson obviously they're thinking they're in a galaxy brain compared to what I'm doing. But I do enjoy the analysis, and I do think they were right. I wasn't as big of a fan of Vidal. But I definitely am now, and I'm with you. I think you got to get him in your lineups everywhere. As they go for an AFC West title, perhaps, Ferrell. And I know the Chiefs are still standing in the way. We can talk about that too.
Yeah, last year was just too early for Vidal, and it swing and a miss on my part with him this year. And the way he's playing will ensure one thing, that Haskins will continue to play special teams. Mm-hmm. There are not any special teamers amongst Rice, Worthy, and Kelsey, the elite receiving corps at Kansas City. With Rice's return, Tyler, does the offense elevate, and do all of these players continue to have fantasy scoring relevance? Kelsey now is back to his form of 15 to 20 a game. Just break it down on how you see the next few games with the receiver mix in Kansas City.
Yeah, if I had to guess, I would say that this is probably an offense that can only sustain 2 pass catching options every week. I think that a lot of the layup horizontal stuff that Kelsey's taking advantage of right now, Rice is going to win now that he's coming back from suspension. Selfishly, I want Worthy to be that second guy just because of the draft capital that I invested in him during, all the preseason. I'm worried about Kelsey and this spot. I don't think in 2025 there's that many NFL teams that can support 3 pass catching options. It feels like the passing game in 25 is brutal. I think maybe the Chiefs are the only team with a super high pass rate over expectation. If we look at that statistic, most of these other teams are just not throwing as much as we'd want to if we're hoping for some sort of like a 3-pass catching role. So if I had to guess,
with the exception of the Joe Flacco-led Bengals.
Oh yeah. Last night was awesome.
Yeah.
So if I had to guess, I would say, Rice. I think Rice steps in and immediately becomes like a top 5, top 6 wide receiver option. I think Worthy, takes Tyquan Thornton kind of down to 0, and I think Kelsey loses a lot of that volume he was getting on those underneath routes, that horizontal action. You're probably still forced to start Kelsey depending on where you drafted him. I don't know what a lot of people were doing with their tight end 2s when they took Kelsey as their tight end 1, but I think this is an offense where now the doom scenario for me, and I'm hoping this isn't the case. I really don't want this to be an offense where we can only start Rice with confidence. I really don't want Worthy to be like Kansas City's JMO. I hope that's not what happens.
Permar99 joining us tonight, and
there he is.
It's Rice and Worthy, pretty easy on that one. Worthy with an A dot versus cover 3 in a smash spot. And I will say this, not only for this week, Tyler, and maybe this will make you feel better going forward. I think that Rice and Kelsey, kind of what you were saying, a little bit of a duplication of skills, a little bit of duplication of how they win, whereas Worthy is the outlier there. Like, he's the guy that can go with Kelsey or Rice. In games that Rice played last year, which I know is a small sample size, Kelsey was kind of bad. It wasn't even average. And to you, I would agree that I'm concerned with Kelsey going forward as long as Rice and Worthy are on the field. I think not only to Permar's point, not only is it Rice and Worthy this week, I think it's going to be Rice and Worthy on most weeks going forward here. So that's how I feel about it. I think 2 of 3 every single week will be fantasy contributors. And most of the time, that's going to be the 2 wide receivers here. Speaking of a situation where we just can't find fantasy goodness for both players, and maybe we shouldn't be looking for it, Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson have gone back and forth this year, and mostly it's been Stevenson, despite the fumbles. Fumbling doesn't matter to Mike Vrabel, and if your name is Ramondre Stevenson. So whatever pictures he has of Vrabel doing whatever, just riding this out. I bring this up tonight because they're in Tennessee this weekend, who just fired their head coach, a state of upheaval, a state of disarray. Can we start? Now, I'm not saying you start these guys both on your one team. I'm saying if you have them on separate teams. Would you feel good about both these guys as an FFPC flex start this weekend between Henderson and Stevenson, Tyler?
I mean, I'm only starting these guys in leagues where I feel like the backup plan is 5 points. And the reason I say that is, what's the argument of benching like someone like Tyler Algier over these 2 dudes? I think that I can make probably a more convincing argument to fire up Tyler Algier over Ramondre and Travion Henderson at this point. Travion got, I think, 19 snaps, turned it into 11 touches. It was like 9 for 27 with a catch. I think Ramondre got all the other snaps, 13 carries, 18 yards. They're not giving Travion any of the high leverage carries, the goal line carries. They're not giving Ramondre a lot of the explosive stuff between the 20s. So the running game, this team is just atrocious. I think Drake May is by far the most efficient runner on this squad. So this is a spot where, I'm full-blown green light on Drake May, but I want nothing to do with either one of these running backs. And if I've got a 15th or a 16th round Algier on my bench, I'm firing him up over these 2 guys.
That's right. And man, what do you 2 think? Because you each have your finger on the pulse of the variety of analysts and contributors and other drafters. Why was there so much Travion Henderson excitement in this early draft?
Tyler, you go ahead and answer this first.
I think that there's a tendency for the sharps to love the shiny question mark. That was the case with Travion. It was the case with RJ Harvey. It was the case with Travis Hunter to an extent. And I'm more exposed to Hunter than I am the rookie running backs. I drafted Genty. I drafted a lot of 3rd round Omarion Hampton, and I stayed away from Harvey and Travion largely unless I could get those guys in the 5th and 6th round. And I saw them being steamed all the way up to like early 3rd, mid 3rd. I think people get bored with value. Like J.K. Dobbins when he's healthy, great talent. I don't know why everyone was talking like this guy was dusted and done. And I love Bucky, but drafting Rachaad White at like 165, there's always veteran options. And for whatever reasons, the Sharp community loves steaming up the new question mark. It's just a thing we do every year.
My argument was kind of what Steve Yergalos has said. Why was everybody involved in drafting Trevion Henderson so high this year? Steve Yergalos says, quite frankly, Ramondre sucks. That's why Ramondre Stevenson sucks. That's why everybody wanted Trevion Henderson. And I think there is something to that. I also think, at least for my part, when you have an opposing GM and Chris Ballard, who didn't draft you, who was the GM of the Colts, and he just goes off script and answering a question about one of his own draft picks to talk about how good you are as a pass blocker, as good as a pass protector as you were in college. And it was so bizarre to me. And I'm like, God, this guy must be really good at pass pro. And he was in college. So that got me excited. I'm like, they're not going to be able to keep this guy off the field. He's doing stuff other rookies can't do. He's an exciting player. So I was on board until he got to the very end of drafting season and he was just going super high. Then I was kind of like, ugh, I probably should stay away from this guy. But he hasn't shown the pass blocking chops in the pros. And despite Ramondre Stevenson sucking, I was asked this question on one of my local shows here in Northeast Wisconsin. And my good buddy Hop said, hey, what do I do with Henderson? I feel like I'm wasting a roster spot. I said, I'm going to be wasting a roster spot on Henderson as well, but it might take a Stevenson injury to make Henderson relevant. Fantasy Soprano, Steven Yergalos already said, Mike Vrabel still has Antonio Gibson, number 2 on the depth chart, who is out for the year with a torn up knee, which I think is hilarious. Not true, but very hilarious that he would still have him number 2 on the depth chart. I'm rambling.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
That Vrabel stubbornness was part of it for me too. Like we can all see that Ramondre is, not a great talent here, but it's like that Arthur Smith thing where he was just steadfast on jamming Algier down the A gap when Bijan was sitting there. There's a couple coaches in this league where no matter what the talent profile is, it's just awful to go all in early on running backs that are sitting in that depth chart number 2 spot. So Vrabel's just brutal sometimes. And even this week, I feel like this is a spot where, again, Drake May is going to crush, but I don't want anything to do with either running back.
That's really interesting. And I love that description of the shiny question mark. And look, fantasy players and fantasy sharks can all make mistakes. When we were talking about the San Diego running back, I think of 31 general managers who left him on the practice squad, who could have pulled him off that practice squad and brought him in anytime, and what they would have today. So it's a difficult business for everyone. That's the beauty of fantasy sports, because you truly get to be in that position of making those decisions just like they're made in the NFL. There's a decision coming up in Tampa that when we talk about why did this player get drafted, because Ramondre sucks and all these type things, Cade Otton, who's been affectionately referred to on this show as Cade Rotten, but all of a sudden he begins to have the contribution in our league, the FFPC, that rewards the tight end, and he begins to look like he is filling some of the potential that we've seen before. Your plans on Otton this Monday night's matchup?
It's funny because we're almost a year to the date that he went off last year. I was actually at the Bucs game against the Ravens on that Thursday night when Godwin went down with that awful injury. And then Mike Evans, obviously hurt his hamstring. And that was kind of like the beginning of Otton having that crazy 4-game stretch. I think we're at another spot here where the Egbuka injury, the Godwin injury, you got Evans coming back. Who knows if he's 100%? I mean, he's trending in that direction at least. And then you've got maybe Sterling Shepard vying for the underneath stuff. You've got Tez Johnson with the home run ball. This feels like a pretty safe game to kind of pencil in Cade Otton for at least like 6 for 50. And in an FFPC format, I mean, that's a 14. So there's not many people that I'm going to be, benching Cade Otton for unless I have a super high conviction play in the flex or an insane matchup at tight end. Mm-hmm. So I think you fire him up here because the Lions are absolutely going to force them to throw the ball. I mean, Goff, his splits are almost as weird as Drew Brees's were back in the day when it's home and away. So, Goff at home tears it up. I think this is a great Cade Otton spot, and I'm definitely starting him unless I've got a Jake Ferg, a McBride, or somebody like that. And I love my flex spots.
This is going to lead well into our first email here for you, Tyler, and it comes to us from Harry in New York. What's up, Tyler? Do you think Mike Evans will be worth the wait on Monday night? Thanks. That is Harry in New York. Harry, we appreciate the email from you as well. So Mike Evans, you already alluded to it. Tyler should be coming back this week. The latest that we have on him is that he had a planned rest day today and did not practice. Tomorrow, obviously, is the big practice day. But when you consider that this is one of 2 Monday night games, you do have some options. You could pick up one of the Permar was just talking about Tez Johnson, players that would be available on Monday night in case he can't go. You're looking at, Jaden Higgins would be available probably in some leagues. Jalen Noel, Torrey Horton, maybe, I don't know about that. Or you could go with one of the Lions Tesla or something like that. Obviously not great, replacements for Evans, but you do need those late swap capabilities if you are going to roll with Evans. Do you think he is worth the roll of the dice right now, Tyler, in a vacuum? I know it depends upon each specific roster.
Yes, in a vacuum, I'm taking the risk. As long as there's some sort of late swap option I have that makes the floor not awful. I don't want to risk taking a 0. And that's also a spot where I'm going to look at my head-to-head and see who I'm playing against. If I've got a guy who's absolutely just destroyed with injuries and bye week issues, that may affect my opinion. But if I need to put up 140, 150 this week, I'm not benching Mike Evans if I feel like he can play in a smash spot. It just feels silly to do that.
Real quick before let's go to Dom Gazzetti. I think he just yelled down the hall at you, Ferrell. Ask the question to Tyler. Cade Otton or Harold Fannin this week? Which one would you be rolling with? Obviously, Otton at Detroit, and then Harold Fannin. Probably. Has Njoku already been ruled out? I think he might have been. Harold Fannin at home against those that vaunted Dolphins defense. Which one are you rolling with here if you can only play one, Fannin or Otton?
Yeah, I like both these spots. I'm probably picking Fannin here just because he was so involved in that offense even before the Njoku injury. Judy has been nothing. I mean, they're scheming up Fannin. I mean, they're doing weird little trick gadget Tyler Warren style plays with him inside the 5. You saw the sort of usage he had when Njoku went out of that game last week, 7 for 85. I like both those guys, but I think that the Fannin play has a little more touchdown potential, I think, than the Otton play does with Mike Evans back. So I'm probably going Fannin there, but if I had both those dudes in my lineup, I might actually flex one and start the other at tight end, and I'd love to know who he's flexing if he's considering benching one of those guys.
I was just thinking about this too as you were saying that, what happened if he because I think it's entirely possible that he might have drafted Tyler Warren or Jake Ferguson, and then you plan one of those guys at tight end, and then what about if you roll out both Fannin and Cade Otton this week, the old 3 tight end set?
It is the dual. It's a wonderful thing. It's just a wonderful thing. Yes, you guys are spot on about Fannin because the team loves him. And Stephen G had a joke in here that says the quarterback, well, it may be more truth than comedy, can't throw the ball more than 10 or 12 yards, which is an endorsement for Fannin. So
yeah,
we're in
that makes me nervous for Judy. It makes me love Fannin. If anything, that's an argument for Fannin.
Yeah, Cleveland doesn't need a field flipper on their offense because it's not a real threat. Everybody knows Gabriel can't throw it that deep. Okay, one more email here for you, Tyler, and it comes to us from Cal in Wallingford, Connecticut. Hey, Tyler, how do you feel about starting Jawan Jennings with Kendrick Bourne still there and George Kittle expected to come back Sunday night? Thank you for the email, Cal in Wallingford, Connecticut. Yeah, Jennings is playing through a high and low ankle sprain. He's got 5 bruised ribs. He's got food poisoning. He's got a head cold. He's throwing up all over the damn place. This guy is a hurting unit right now. But how would you feel about starting him in a game against Atlanta, knowing that Bourne and Kittle are probably going to be out there?
Yeah, whatever weird monkey's paw, infinity stone thing that Christian McCaffrey's doing to stay healthy at the expense of everyone else. Juwan Jennings, poor Juwan Jennings, he feels to be like one of the victims there.
McCaffrey's he's robbing him of his strength.
I know.
He's sucking the Jennings, the
That's
Jennings
what
aura for his own personal benefit.
You know, I drafted a ton of Juwan Jennings in that sort of like 80 to 90 overall range. I loved him there. And it's been a little disappointing. I don't think this is the week that I'm going to start him. I need to see it just one time because there was some weird friction. There's some weird reports between him and the coach too. I saw him and Shanahan even getting into it, which felt really, really strange to me on top of like all the other injuries. Mac Jones has that Bourne connection. Kittle comes back. That's another option. CMC is like the greatest PPR scam of all time. I don't know that I love jamming Juwan Jennings into this option unless like plan B is somebody like Jerry Jeudy or Travis Hunter or someone like that, like jam Romeo Doubs or somebody like that in there. I think that's probably a more intriguing option to me than Juwan Jennings in this spot at this time, and then hope that, down the road he gets healthy, Purdy gets healthy, and that weird little mind meld that, Mac and Bourne has disappears if you're a Jennings owner.
That's true. Mac Jones and Kendrick Bourne, the San Francisco connection you didn't know you needed, but we get it anyway. Not the connection we needed, the one we deserved. Ferrell, fresh out of emails here, one final question from you tonight from Mr. Clendenin.
And we've hit on some good ones, and I think you probably got a long list. Sometimes this question can occasionally stump our guests. Maybe it's because I don't always ask it properly, but we just use Jennings. We can't use him. We got to bring some fresh information to the show. Who are you contemplating setting that might be a normal start for you on your best teams and maybe some of your teams that aren't playing at that level? And who's the one sleeper this weekend in the field?
So the guy that I'm probably going to sit, and I don't love doing it, but it just makes a lot of sense to me. I think I'm sitting Tony Pollard. I don't love this matchup for Pollard. I expect the Titans to get absolutely blown out. Spears is back. There feels to be a little regression in that offense. If you're not playing with a lead, Spears probably has more snap rates, probably getting more usage. If you're not bailed out by a touchdown, what are you really hoping for from Pollard in this game? So, and then at wide receiver, if I had to bench somebody that probably had, like, let's say, round 1 to 6 capital, I'm probably benching Devonta Smith in every spot I have him. And that may sound slightly controversial, but Devonta's too chill. He doesn't complain as much as A.J. Brown does. He's not going to be that greasy, wheel guy getting addressed by Jalen Hurts after 7 parking lot meetings or whatever's going on over there right now. I don't love firing up Devonta Smith either. And then I guess Jacoby Myers, but I don't even think he's going to play. If he plays, just, leave the 3 catches for 40 yards on your bench and don't worry about it. I don't think he's worthwhile anymore unless something changes at the trade deadline.
Devonta Smith has had, against Denver of all teams, guys, had an 8 catch for 114-yard performance. He has failed to top 65 yards in every single other game this year. He's had 2 sub-30 games. He's had a 49-yard game, a 53-yard game. And outside of that, he did have an 8 catch for 60-yard performance against the Rams with a touchdown. So that actually was all right in week 3. But, dude, 3 catches, 4 catches, 2 catches, 4 catches. I get it, man. He's really tough to trust. All the talent's there. I would imagine that the Eagles might shake some things up. Lane Johnson said that they're getting a little bit too predictable, and maybe we'll see something different this week. But I'm kind of with you, Tyler, on this. I'm fine with benching Devonta Smith. I'll let him blow up a week on my bench, and once I see it, then maybe I'm more likely to start him in weeks following. I just haven't seen enough right now, and going up against that Vikings defense as well certainly won't be easy. So yeah, it makes some sense there for sure.
Those are some fantastic answers.
Sorry, I forgot about the Pollard response too. Regarding that too, I think you're right too. Game script is not working in his favor. I would think that New England just puts it on Tennessee with Vrabel coming in against his old team, and they just go old school Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson on him and just run up like 40-some points. Certainly could be a significant blowout there, and then that means good things for Tyjae Spears. Sleeper, maybe I missed it. Did you give us a sleeper?
I think I already referenced Doubs. I like firing up Romeo Doubs in this spot. If you really need some sort of wide receiver help, I don't know what's going on. It's really, really hard to identify which pass catcher in that Green Bay Packer offense is going to be the go-to guy week in, week out. They love going to him in the red zone, inside the 5, inside the 10. If it's not Jacobs, they look to him so often. And then if you don't want to fire up Romeo.
We demand significant sleeper performance on the show, Tyler. We go down a little bit.
We need
guys. Yeah, unfortunately,
come on.
Yeah,
man
unfortunately,
up.
I don't even think Fannin counts as a sleeper anymore. Like he's out. Like everybody knows.
No.
Okay, so maybe
that's a great thing, because amongst the fantasy players that listen to this show and the players that you are defeating in the FFPC, there are no sleepers. It's really, everyone knows these players. I turned on a fantasy show on ESPN this week that told us I think it was we should consider picking up I don't know, some recent, it might have been Bourne or something like that after his 2 games. It's ridiculous. There's, if you can find a sleeper, you're really accomplishing something.
Yes.
Well, I'll say this. I made bids on Christian Watson this week at pretty affordable pricing just to kind of see what happens down the road there. But if you want something for this week, I never pronounce his name right. Iomanor or whatever. Yeah. I mean, post Ridley, I think that's a spot they're going to be down. They're going to have to throw a ton. Maybe he gets you some sort of fourth quarter garbage time. I mean, the guy can play. It's just a matter of what the opportunities look like. So, it's funny. Mike Leone of ETR, I feel like I have 40% Romeo Doubs right now, and it's probably his fault. So maybe that's why I'm locking in on him. But I do like him this week if you're in an absolutely desperate spot. And then somebody at running back, if you're desperate, I've said Algier's name like 13 times. I still think Algier is like a way more fun click than somebody like Ramondre or Travion. And if we showed the nerds this, 6 weeks ago, they would be absolutely puking in a corner. If I was telling you to fire up Tyler Algier over Travion Henderson, I think that would have been brutal news to the boys drafting in mid-August.
I will say Calvin Ridley already ruled out this week with that hamstring, and this is a game that they should have to throw a lot, and that means good things for Alec Iomanor. So, yeah, good call there for sure, Tyler. And I'm not surprised because you're 4th place overall in the Big Gorilla. You have made a ton of great calls, both drafting, lineup sitting, and blind bidding so far this season. Thank you so much for hopping aboard tonight. This was a lot of fun. I wish you nothing but the best in week 7. Good luck the rest of the way, but most importantly, enjoy the remainder of the season, enjoy the journey, enjoy the ride. And if you do end up cashing that $1 million, we'll definitely have you back on later this year to tell us all about it.
Sounds awesome, guys. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Tyler Clendenin, ladies and gentlemen, the 4th place team owner in the 2025 FFPC Big Gorilla Tournament heading into week 7. Great stuff from him tonight for sure.
Really like that guy, Balky.
I do too. I want to go rapid fire on these starter sits because the people demand answers. Damn it, we're going to give it to them.
Well, your Louisville fans, wait a minute. Your Louisville fans are demanding something too.
Sorry,
Tyler's in Florida, and he could probably hear all the Kentuckians all the way from down in Miami who are having a blast based on the Cardinals' victory over the Hurricanes tonight. And I just wanted to say that there's going to be some Cardinal players on that team that you'll be drafting next year, especially a player named Bell. So it's been a very, very big weekend for everyone from Louisville. Big football game.
I take pleasure in, as a Florida State fan, I take pleasure in any Miami.
I knew you'd get a kick out of that.
University of Miami loss, especially coming after the Hurricanes beat the Seminoles earlier this year. Oinker, fun fact, He lives in Wisconsin, but he was born in Kentucky.
It's true.
So he is very excited, aren't you, buddy, about Louisville beating Miami tonight. Congratulations to the Cardinals. Oinker says congratulations as well. Fun stuff as we kick off a great week 8 of college football. Okay, moving on. Rick in San Antonio.
Okay.
Daniel Jones at the Chargers or Matthew Stafford in London against the Jags. Appreciate y'all. That is Rick in San Antonio. Ferrell, I'll lead this one off here. If I have the choice between these two quarterbacks this week, as good as Matthew Stafford is, it's really, really difficult for me to say, yeah, I'm going to play him against the Jaguars without Puka Nacua. I don't know if I can do that. And that's why I think I'm going to go with Daniel Jones in a huge matchup against the Chargers. I just feel like Jones has more of his ducks in a row here. So I'm going to play him over Stafford.
Yeah, and Jones has Pittman. It's an easy thing. Indy Jones is your guy.
Let's see here. I will read this because we love all of our viewers / listeners, but I'm not a fan of it. Hey, fellas, are you of the belief that the Lions feed David Montgomery against the Bucs enough to make him the better choice over Travis Etienne? Go Dodgers. That is Mike in Los Angeles. Mike, you and I are enemies for at least the next couple of innings. But I will answer the question. Montgomery over Etienne. Yeah, I do believe Montgomery's in for a good week. I'm still going to play Etienne, though.
I dislike the idea ever of setting Montgomery. So this would be a difficult play for me. I would probably try to find a third player to set where I could get both these guys in the lineup. It's an Otten Fannin situation for me. Yes. Jacksonville. Etienne was a player that I avoided in the drafts. Montgomery was a player that I embraced in the draft. So perhaps some of this is wishful thinking on my part, Balky. I'm going to roll with Montgomery.
Yeah, I think one of my fantasy football team names next year will be called the Otten Fannin Conundrum, something like that, because we've developed something on the show today.
You need a little more mystery like most of your team names have, Balky.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're mysteries to everybody but me and a few.
And me.
Okay, Ron in Fairview Heights, Illinois. Would you play Sterling Shepard instead of Cooper Kupp on Monday? So this is a decision that he'll have to make Sunday night, I believe, right? Because that's beg your pardon. Both these games are Monday night, so he can make this decision Monday. Mm-hmm. Sterling Shepard is going to be going up against the Detroit Lions. 52.5 is the total on that game. Should be a lot of offense. Texans and Seahawks, only 41.5 is the total on that. The Seahawks are 3-point favorites for Cooper Kupp versus Sterling Shepard this week. We've heard Permar talking up Tez Johnson a lot tonight. We saw Cameron Johnson be the choice for Steven Yergalos tonight in the chat. Nobody's mentioned Sterling Shepard so far. Maybe it's because he's more of a high floor, low ceiling type player. Mm-hmm. But I think Cooper Kupp is kind of like that at this point of his career. In fact, he might be a low floor, low ceiling type player. Ferrell, how are you weighing in on Shepard versus Kupp in week 7?
I would say flip a coin and you're likely to get the same result. I'll point out that our beloved Stephen G and our visitor Permar to the league, given good player, there's a very good receiver room in Tampa. Shepard adds to that and being a crafty veteran there. Let's go with Shepard just out of sentimentality.
I think I'm going to agree on that. I think it's Shepard over Kupp. I have zero expectation for Kupp, and with 52.5 points being expected to be scored, you never know with Shepard. Okay, we want to go to the chat for a couple of them here. Your host right now, Dominic Gazzetti, Daniel Jones or Drake May. This is a slam dunk. I'm playing Drake May over Daniel Jones.
Me too.
And then we got our good buddy James Hicks, Trey Tucker or Tyjae Spears at flex this week. I got the Raiders chain on, so I should say Tucker here, but I think I actually lean towards Spears. Farrell, what do you think?
Yeah, that's let's get Mr. Clendenin back on the show and let's talk about the shiny question mark. Let's go to Trey Tucker, who, as we talked about in the show, Balky, we no longer feel, and for the first time in a long time, we no longer feel that we can trust Jacoby Myers, win or lose for the Raiders, to be a big contributor. So in this situation, we're going to go Tucker.
Yeah, everybody's saying Tucker. Dom Gazzetti says Trey is more fun. Permar says it's Tucker, but it's a bad matchup. Jacoby Myers may be out. That's true. Thank you, Steve. And we do know that Brock Bowers is out too. So that's another thing to consider. Yeah, maybe it is Tucker. Maybe I need to revise that here. Last one. Do I have one more? No, we don't have one more. No, we do have one more. Yeah, Pat in Belleville, New Jersey. Tough one for me this week, guys. Oh, it's another Raiders question. Perfect. With Brock Bowers expected to miss, do I start Michael Mayer over Mason Taylor? Thanks for reading this on the stream, which I know you will do. Winky face. Thank you so much, Pat. In New Jersey, love it. Yeah, listen, Mayer's a fine start. Mason Taylor could be an epic start this week. Who else is going to be catching the ball for the Jets this week against Carolina? To me, Mason Taylor, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 catches would not surprise me. I don't know what to expect from Mayer, but I do expect a lot of volume from Mason Taylor. So I'm playing Taylor over Mayer.
We're going to go with Taylor. I'm going to second that for you, Balky. Fields needs a short. Fields needs a release, and Taylor will provide that for him.
We are going to give you a release from this show right now, Ferrell. Thank you so much for hanging out. Enjoy Las Vegas, and I'm sure you and Tom are going to have a good time going forward here. We will talk with you again next Friday night, and hopefully the ball bounces your way in your leagues this week as well in Week 7. Appreciate you, dude, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Balky.
You got it. Ferrell Elliott, the definitive commissioner of fantasy football. Check out KFFSC.com. KFFSC.com is where to go to play against me and a lot of the other people in the chat tonight in the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship. That will complete tonight's stream. I want to thank Tyler Clendenin, Ferrell Elliott, the FFPC, Rob, Bryce, and of course, each and every one of you. We will be back next Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern time, with the Big Gorilla second place overall team owner, Jason Milich. He's going to join us next week. That's going to be a lot of fun. If you can't wait until Friday for some FFPC fantasy football talk, I got you covered. Tuesday night, this past Tuesday night, we had the 29-time FFPC league champ Steve Highfill on the road of his high-stakes lowdown. This Tuesday, well, and I know he was in the chat room earlier tonight. He might still be in there. Tommy Herron, the 7th-place Big Gorilla team owner, he's going to join us on Tuesday night at 10 o'clock on the road of his high-stakes lowdown for his analysis on the upcoming Week 8. We'll break down Week 7. We'll talk about the waiver wire. That's going to be a fun show. It always is, 10 o'clock. Right here on the FFPC socials. And then in case you missed the Insider Access show on the Better Sports Network or in the FFPC socials, I had on FTN Fantasy and Fantasy Points contributor CH Herms on. We had a fun 2 hours. Herms is a big Steelers fan, so to be able to cover that first 45 minutes to an hour of the Thursday night game with the Steelers and Rodgers and Flacco looking like it was, 2012 out there. That was a lot of fun. You can catch that anywhere you get your podcasts or, of course, the FFPC or Better Sports Network. The show will be back this coming Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Connor Allen from 4 for 4 will join us for 2 full hours. It's going to be a good time. FFPC Weekly Challenge is live. No draft, no salary cap. Pick 10 or 12 players, depending upon if you want to play with kickers and defenses or not. You can win up to $2,500. You can play in 10, 30, or 100-team contests, and only one player per NFL team. So if you want Michael Mayer, you can't have Trey Tucker. If you want Travis Etienne, you can't have Travis Hunter. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. MyFFPC.com. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, comment on the video, share with your friends, share with your enemies, and get notified each and every time we go live, which will be Tuesday night, 10 o'clock on the road of his high-stakes lowdown with Tommy Island himself, Tommy Herron. Thanks for watching, everybody. For Tyler Clendenin and Ferrell Elliott, I'm Eric Balkman. This has been the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour right here on the FFPC YouTube channel. Your weekend officially starts now.
This has been another episode of the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour presented by MyFFPC.com. It was broadcast live and was watched around the world. Balky and Ferrell will be back next week with more analysis, more interviews, and more advice from guests much smarter than they are. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk with you again next week.
Final reminder for everybody out there, 9:30 a.m. kickoff from jolly old London. Los Angeles Rams taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Get Puka Nacua out of your lineups. He's out. And make sure you're putting in your bids. Those Rams and Jaguars players aren't eligible for bidding on Sunday morning, but everyone else is. So make sure you're getting your lineup set in preparation for a glorious Week 7 in the FFPC. Thanks for watching, everybody, streaming, listening. I really appreciate it. And we'll talk with you again on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday next week right here on the FFPC YouTube channel.